Hi, welcome to yet another chess YouTube channel. Um, I have started this channel mainly for myself. I wanted to make YouTube videos on some of the games that I've been studying just to kind of reinforce my learnings a little bit better for myself. But maybe a side effect of this is that other people will also get something out of it. I mean, you're here for a reason now, so maybe you are looking to get something out of these videos. I don't know, maybe you'll enjoy the insights that I make, or the games that I pick, or just my cute pink aesthetic here. It would be an added bonus if anyone gets anything else out of these YouTube videos as well. I am gonna start with a series on games from a book called 62 Most Instructive Games of Chess Ever Played, written by Irving Chernev, and it does pretty much what it says on the tin. It looks at some very instructive games. It's a little bit outdated, but still useful. And I've read this book. I've made notes on the games, and I wanted to do some YouTube videos on a selection of those games, the ones that I think are the most instructive or useful for the kind of like club player, I would say. So I'm going to start with the first game in the book, which is a game between Capablanca and Tartakower in 1924. It's a very famous game, famous endgame, which some of you might have already seen. But the whole game is quite nice to go through. And Black actually plays a classical Dutch in this game, which is something I play. So for the swashbuckling attackers out there might be some tips on the Dutch defense as well. So, Capablanca is white, and he opens with d4. We get e6 in return, knight f3, and then f5. We've got into the Dutch. c4, knight f6, bishop g5, bishop e7 to unpin there. Knight c3, and castles. And then this is the standard kind of classical Dutch setup. Usually d6 is included at some point, but it's quite delayed in this game. But anyway, Capablanca continues e3. We get b6, bishop d3, and bishop b7. So sort of a general rule that I have in the classical Dutch is that if white doesn't fianchetto their light squared bishop, then we fianchetto ours. And then we use that in our kingside attack or to help fight for e4. So now white castles, and we get queen to e8. And then this is another common idea in the classical Dutch. We're wanting to move our queen to h5 and use it as part of a kingside attack. I would say this is quite early here to make this move. As I say, usually d6 is included, but it's not a bad move at all. Capablanca plays queen to e2, basically saying that if black goes queen h5, then he's going to play e4 immediately, open up the center, and attack that weak king that has been weakened by the Dutch f5 move. Queen e2 prevents queen h5. So instead, black plays knight to e4, and then this is a very another very common move in these positions in the Dutch. It's a very freeing move, relieves a lot of pressure because it leads to a lot of forced trades. White has to play bishop takes on e7. If instead of taking on e7, if white goes knight takes on e4, then we would get f takes on e4, then throw in bishop e7, and e takes on d3. It's hitting the queen on e2, so you don't have a chance to take the rook on f1. So this takes advantage of this kind of slightly strangely placed queen on e2. And obviously if queen takes on d3, then we get queen takes on e7. And it's a similar kind of thing. If bishop takes rather than knight takes, then we get f takes, bishop takes on e7, e takes on f3, and again it's hitting the queen first, so we don't really have time to move away. So yeah, instead we get bishop takes on e7, knight takes on c3 is thrown in, and obviously b takes is forced again, and then queen takes on e7. And yeah, we can see that these trades have happened. It frees up black quite a bit, releases a lot of pressure, and yeah, things have simplified a little bit. Capablanca's next move is maybe the first really instructive kind of move that we'll see in the game. He plays a4, and this prevents, well, first of all, it takes up some space on the queen side, but it also, more importantly, it prevents the queen infiltrating to the a3 square, because it's protected by the rook now. So we get bishop takes on f3, queen takes back, and then knight to c6. And now Capablanca plays rook f to b1. And Capablanca's kind of saying, well, you know, white has these two double c pawns, but sort of as compensation for that, he gets to use the open b file. And, you know, Capablanca will try to make the most out of these imbalances. We get black playing rook a to e8. If instead of that, black played knight to a5, which is a common move in the Dutch, trying to get this knight to come in and putting pressure on c4, then actually white can undouble his pawns by force. So he goes c5, takes, and then rook b5, knight c6, and then rook takes on c5, and then white is just better here. So instead we get rook a to e8 and queen to h3. This is another lovely move here. So Capablanca is kind of asking the question, well, from black's last move, he can tell that black wants to play e5 and open up the center on black's terms, with the rook already on a file that might get opened. But white would also like to play e4 himself and open up the center on his terms. So white kind of firstly prevents e5, and that's what this queen h3 move does. If instead Capablanca had gone straight in for e4, then we would have got e5, e takes f5, and e4 with the fork. So yeah, Capablanca can't do that yet. So he plays queen to h3, and we get rook to f6. Again, if black had tried to play e5, then just loses the pawn with bishop takes f5. And this is why we played queen to h3. So if the queen was still on f3, there would be g6, which just doesn't quite lose because it's the check on d5, but still. So yeah, instead we get rook to f6, and then we get f4, and then this controls e5 permanently, and allows white to hopefully get e4 in. So we get knight to a5, queen back to f3, again with the aim of playing e4. We finally get d6, and then rook e1, again more pressure on that e file, queen d7, and then finally e4, what Capablanca has been playing for. We get f takes e4, queen takes e4, threatening h7, we get g6, And then Capablanca just stabilizes the position with g3, king f8, and then king g2. We get rook to f7, h4, potentially already thinking about the endgame now, pushing that h pawn early, and then d5. And then this leads to trades on the e file. So we get c takes d5, e takes d5, queen takes e8 check, queen takes back, and then rook takes e8, and king takes. And now we're getting into the real endgame here, and Capablanca plays very quickly. He immediately plays h5, and what he's doing here, he wants to open up the h file to eventually use for his rook as a way into the position. So black doesn't take, but instead plays rook f6, and we get h takes g6, h takes g6, and now this rook is stuck defending the g-pawn that's being attacked by the bishop. And then Capablanca immediately goes rook h1. His whole plan, get the rook on the h file and infiltrate the position. We get king f8, and then rook h7, and that is a monster rook. Yeah, it's lovely, and this is why this game is so instructive. Capablanca gets his rook to the 7th rank immediately, and there's sort of 3 reasons why this is so good. So 1, it cuts off the king from advancing up the board. 2, it's attacking any pawns that are already that are still on the 7th rank, and thirdly, any pawns that have left the 7th rank, the rook can go behind them. So that's why, those are 3 main reasons why we love a rook on the 7th rank. Tartakower tries to get counterplay, attacks the c-pawn, but Capablanca ignores that because the rook is forced to defend g6. So Capablanca plays g4. We get knight c4 and g5, just getting that pawn forward. And then here, black thinks that if he can trade his knight for white's bishop, then he should be fine. So he plays knight e3 check, king f3, and knight f6. Sorry, f5. Blocking the bishop's attack on the pawn, so that the rook would be free to take on c4. But Capablanca goes into the trade, just the pure rook and pawn endgame. And now here is the beautiful game, beautiful move of the game. We get king g3, allowing black to take c3 with check, which is exactly what happens. White goes up the board with h4, and black comes behind the f-pawn with rook f3. Again threatening to take the pawn, and again Capablanca allows it to happen with check. He plays g6, and Tartakower says, okay, yes, I'll take your pawn with check, and white moves up the board with king g5. And now not only have we got this monster rook on the 7th rank, but we also have a passed pawn on the 6th rank and a very active king on the 5th rank, which can come to the 6th rank. We get rook to e4, so black can't take on d4 because we get king f6, king g8, and rook d7 threatening checkmate, and the rook can't come to defend. Whereas if it's on e4, it can defend against mating threats, as we'll see. So we get king f6, bringing that king forward, king g8 to avoid mate, rook g7 check, just pushing the king further into the corner, so it's further away from those queenside pawns. So king h8, and then Capablanca reclaims one of the pawns by taking on c7. He's also threatening mate here, so the rook has to come back to e8, and this is why it stayed on the e file. And now Capablanca very calmly just takes the pawn on f5. He's not threatening mate anymore, so we get rook to e4, sorry, king f6, and now Tartakower can check from behind, so we get rook f4 check, king e5, and then rook g4, threatening the pawn. But here Capablanca just plays g7 check, and he says, if we trade our rooks on g7, my king is going to be closer to those queenside pawns, and I'll win the game that way. So yeah, Tartakower plays king g8. If he has played rook g7, as I say, we get a trade, and then white is just closer to those queenside pawns. So yeah, king g8, and now Capablanca goes ahead and takes the a pawn with his rook. We get rook g1, Capablanca takes another pawn on d5, rook c1, king d8, rook c2, d5, rook c1, rook c7, so Tartakower again can't afford a rook trade, so plays rook a1, we get king c6, rook takes on a4, and d6, and in this position Tartakower resigns because it's yeah, just hopeless. That pawn is gonna queen, and it will be game over. So that's game one out of the book 62 Most Instructive Games. After each game, I'm gonna try and do like a list of sort of key learning points. So from this game, sort of key learnings are mostly about the endgame. And we saw that in these kind of rook and pawn endgames, that rook on the 7th can just cause so much trouble. Especially when it's in combination with an active king and a passed pawn. That is the absolute dream. In this game, that combination was just unstoppable. And Capablanca tried to get his rook active really early, sort of as soon as he could. He opened up the H file and moved his rook there. And as we saw, he allowed black to take some pawns with check, but white's activity was more important than this material. So those are the main learning points. There's some smaller ones as well, forcing your opponent's rook to be passive because it has to defend some mating threats. And also we saw that white used some of black's pawn as kind of shields from checks from behind as well. So yeah, that's game one. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Yeah, stick around. I'm going to make some more games from this book. Hopefully they will be informative. But yeah, as I say, it's useful for me anyway, even if no one watches this. So yeah, but yeah, thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you next time.